Hi everybody. It's as I just wrote down, March 23rd. It's Monday. I feel good. I do. What about you? How are you feeling? And check in with me. A bunch of you have responded, and I've got some comments. We do have a discussion going. That was pretty basic stuff. I just wanted to hear from you. We make some connections. It's important that we be connected so that I can show proof for your STCW attendance. You know, this is a required course. I need to have that proof for that reason. So make sure you get doing that. I can't stress that to you enough. President Brennan, Provost Cote has been in touch with us, and our department chair, Captain Miller. Everybody, you know, we have to do this. So make sure you're touching base. You know, if what would be a good thing to say to me if you're not quite sure what to talk about, just say, "Yep, Captain Teal, that was a pretty good video. I don't mind a little bit of a feedback like that," or you know, tell me the sound wasn't good or whatever, and also tell me that you watched it, and so that we have a record of that. That's going to be important to the Coast Guard and to getting your licenses. So let's go. Ship structure, Monday, March 23rd. So what we're talking about today is aft end structure. And it's obviously in the textbook, and we'll be talking about that book out of the way. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is, when we start reading the chapter, is, you know, a lot of effort, a lot of time, considerable attention is paid to the stern of the ship. And here's a key word: in order to improve the flow into and away from the propeller. In the past, we've talked a lot about that. We've talked a lot, well, we haven't talked about this specifically, but what I have talked to you, remember that first day of class I put a $ sign up on the board. And you know, everything in this business is all about money, and if we can improve the flow of water into and away from the propeller, in other words, how it feeds in and then how it feeds back out, if we can improve it, we're really talking about efficiency. And if we can improve efficiency, if we can do that well, it's going to be really good for all of us. There are two distinct types of sterns that I want you to know about. One's called a cruiser stern, and one is called a transom stern. Transom sterns are like we've got on the state of Maine. Transom sterns, as it's written here, I put my marker right there. Transom sterns are the modern choice for the following reasons. They have a good hydrodynamic flow. They're less expensive to build. There is a greater deck area up above. Cruiser sterns, well, they're kind of more old school. They're perhaps more pleasing to the eye. They have more curves. They look more like sort of those old school cargo ships. But what's happening underwater is probably more important. They're not as effective, and they are not as efficient. So I'm going to be asking you on that next test. I'm going to be asking you about the two different types of sterns, and the answers are cruiser sterns and transom sterns. Here's a picture. So this is a old school, right? Gotta clear that's what you're looking at. This one's kind of unique. Actually, look at this. Got a stern anchor here. You can see it coming down. And here's another one. This is a cruiser stern. Now, both of these ships are quite high in the water. This one's actually in a dry dock. But there's that classic shape. So you can see it's pretty old school stuff. On the other hand, this is what's called a transom stern. And you can see this area here. You know, very flat, much like the state of Maine. Now, look, ship is out of the water, very high, very light part of the propellers are showing here. This one, not so much. We can see that it's a little bit more submerged, but we do get a good look at this very different stern than what we looked at in the previous picture. So cruiser stern and transom sterns. And here's a schematic of from the text, chapter 21. Here is a schematic or a drawing for the transom sterns. Now, this drawing will become one of your final exam questions. Remember, we're going to have double bottom drawings, we're going to have bow, fore-end structured drawings of the bow, and we're going to have a stern structured drawings. And this is going to be pretty much the one. I'm going to be providing you with another sheet of paper, and we'll be working through that as a group, and you'll see how we do that. This is a key. Make a note in your textbook that we need to know all the parts of this. And there's really different views here. So this big one here is all the side view, and this is where the propeller shaft would come out right here. You can imagine the propeller sitting here. And so these are some different views and some different details, and we'll try to explain those as we go. Well, we're going to move off this diagram, and we're going to come back to the camera sheet here. And let me just fill this in, and I'll kind of give you the rough shape. This is going to be a transom stern diagram, and this direction, of course, this is towards the bow. And let's label this transom stern. Okay, so we'll get her set up like that. As we go through this, let's make a list. I'll put this down here on my notes. I'll do it in a little bit of a color here. So I'm going to make my list over here of the type of stuff that we want to get into the drawing. So number one would be the steering gear. Flat. We could also, the steering gear room, I guess we've all, or we could use different terms, the steering gear space, something like that. We want to have, I'll put a little bullet there, we're going to have something called the rudder trunk. That's good. Write that down. We're going to show the after peak tank. All right. It's also going to be the after peak bulkhead. Something called a stern tube. Stern frame. And of course, the propeller and the rudder will also include those back there. So steering gear, rudder, steering gear, flat, or the steering gear room, the rudder trunk, the after peak tank, the after peak bulkhead, the stern tube, the stern frame, the propeller, and the rudder. So let's start. Let's divide this space something like this, and we're going to call this area here, this will be the steering gear flat up in this location. And you can imagine walking back there, and through that door, there might be a room here where all the steering gear material was, and you're familiar with that from the training ship. Now, this space underneath, we need to show this somehow because there has to be something called a rudder trunk. And the rudder trunk is a space that connects the outside down here into the machinery. And so let's just show a little bit of machinery, and we'll show some pistons and some rams, and all this stuff so that we can turn the rudder. But the rudder trunk is not a void space. It's a space that connects from where, let's put water right here, connects water level. And that water level could be up here, it could be down here, the waves are coming. This rudder trunk think of the escape trunk down in the engine room that comes all the way up to the main deck, the escape trunk. So you know what a trunk looks like. It's usually a sort of a vertical shaft, and you can imagine that the rudder is down here. I'm going to show the rudder, and I'll put the rudder in. We will do this drawing a number of times, I assure you. And I'm just going to sort of put this down as the rudder in this way, and the rudder post comes off the rudder, goes up through the rudder trunk and into the steering gear flat. So this is the rudder trunk, and this is the rudder post. Now, did I put the rudder post? No, I didn't put the rudder post on this list, so we have to have the rudder and the rudder post. Okay, so let's see. We had a lot of stuff here, so we'll start checking this stuff off. Okay, I got the rudder post, I got the rudder trunk, I got the steering gear flat, so we got check, check, check. Let's see, we got something called a stern tube. Now the stern tube goes right here, and we'll draw it sort of. Again, it's the area where the shaft comes through. So it is round like this. It extends from just outside the ship to here, and we'll label it stern. It would help if I spelled that correctly. And the shaft comes through the stern tube. Have you all learned how to draw something so that, see that little way I just put that on there? That, in mechanical drawing, is a way to show around. It kind of gives it a little bit of dimension. So here's the stern tube. And the stern tube supports the shaft. It has bearings in it. But the stern tube has to be such a way that it allows, see the shaft turning? And we can do that with this. We'll use this bigger pen. So the shaft has to be in here so that it can turn. The propeller shaft has to be able to turn. The other thing it has to do, it has to keep the water out. There is water here, and it wants to come into the engine room. So we need to stop that, so it needs to be a watertight seal, and we'll talk about different ways that that's done. So it has to be able to keep the water out from outside the ship from coming into the shaft alley, and it needs to allow the shaft to be able to rotate. That's a pretty complex and pretty important piece of equipment. You have stern tubes on big ships, and you have them on small boats. If we were there in the classroom, I'd show you a picture I'd show you a little bronze stern tube that's sitting up on that shelf where I keep all the models in the classroom. I'd drag it over and you'd look at it and you'd see how it kind of it allows the shaft to turn. And I think it came off one of our double-ended boats on the waterfront. A number of years ago, we built those and we changed out the stern tubes. Just a little example. Maybe I can find some more pictures of it. And then, any vessel, if we're talking about the state of Maine, or we're talking a little launch or a sailboat on the waterfront, every one that's got a shaft coming out of it and a propeller has to have some type of stern tube for the shaft to go through. So that's a long discussion. Now, of course, we have to have this area here for the propeller, and I'll draw the propeller here with a couple of blades like this, and it connects to the shaft. Kind of get that a little bit more balanced. Now, I didn't do that very well. Let's clean this diagram up here a little bit. What do we have now? We've got the stern tube, and we've got the propeller shaft. We've got the prop itself. We got the rudder. Let's go to our list. Let's see. We got the prop. We got the stern tube. We got the rudder. And let's see, what else have we added here? We got the prop shaft. I guess we can include that as well. So we'll give that a check mark. We got this. We got the rudder post. Yep, we got that. We got the rudder. Check. We got that. I'll use the right colors that I was using. Okay. So we've added a lot of stuff to this diagram. Let me get that set for you. We got this thing called a stern frame. I want to talk about that, a stern frame. And any ship of size is going to have a stern frame. So I'm going to grab, let's see, I think I'll use green to kind of demonstrate what the stern frame area will be. I'm going to color it in here. Every ship would be a little bit different. Stern frame is it's kind of it's an extension of the keel. And so here's the the keel of the ship. Somewhere the keel starts to become a little bit more structural, a little bit bigger. So I'm giving it some pretty big size here. It'll make more sense as we go, but you can see this area of the ship, this area that extends out, all of that is called the stern frame. I think I've got some pretty good pictures of some stern frame coming up, so we'll go ahead and we'll start looking at those. Boom, 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 boom. After peak tank, stern frame. So we've got that. I'm going to check it with green because it's it is green. Well, no, it's green on my drawing. Let's see what else we got. Well, first of all, you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff that we, maybe some new words for you, and so on and so forth. What have I? Oh, I didn't put in the after peak bulkhead. Remember, that's kind of like the collision bulkhead. You get a collision bulkhead on the bow and the after peak bulkhead back on the stern. So let's do that. It's very likely that the after peak bulkhead would be right there. I'm going to put it pretty significant. Remember on the training ship, this is shaft alley, right? And we've all talked about you guys walking down, going into the shaft alley. So the after peak bulkhead is there. And let's just take a little pause here, get myself organized again. I'll be right back. Just hang on 1 minute. Okay, so I did a little bit of sketching and catching up with where I was on the board work. This would be the after peak tank here on this particular drawing. It would be aft of the after peak bulkhead, the after peak tank. It's a ballast tank. Notice that I've kind of shown it surrounding the rudder trunk. So you could, if you were in that tank, you would see this thing called the rudder trunk coming up on the center line. Actually, that's where the rudder's going to be. And you'd be able to, if the tank was empty and you were down there, you know, if you had gone down into the after peak tank and if you had accessed the after peak tank through this manhole cover here, took the nuts and bolts and lifted the cover off and went down through it, you'd be able to walk around that whole space. And you see lots of structural framing members, but you would be in the after peak tank. If you looked this way, the forward bulkhead of that tank would be the after peak bulkhead, and you would see coming up, you know, kind of like the trunk of a tree. It's hollow, and that's the rudder trunk, right? Let me just highlight that. And inside the rudder trunk is the rudder post, and the rudder post connects the rudder all the way up to the machinery in the steering gear flat. So we're going to do this a couple more times. You'll get good. Believe me, you know how I'm going to be with your drawings. You're going to be doing a lot of this stuff. I'll share. We'll create this together a couple of times, and let's move on from there or from here. So what we got now, let me get all my pencils out of the way, and let's go back to this drawing. And oops, that's not what we want. Where is that PowerPoint? Right there. And so we'll go back to this drawing now. And so here's what you just drew in here. Here's the steering gear room, and here's the rudder trunk. It's just this space from here over to here. It's nothing very large. There is a inspection manhole that you would have to enter into the tank. You'd have to come into the steering gear room or wherever you were able to, the crown of the after peak tank. You'd have to go back in there. Then you'd have to, so the tank would have to be empty. Then you could undo this inspection manhole, and you could get a look at the inside of the rudder trunk. Right. Okay. You see this one, here's the stern tube coming down. This is the after peak bulkhead. On this diagram, it's moved up, unlike the one I just drew, but we can draw it in different places. Here's the stern tube. This is where the shaft would be coming through. And here, this shape, right? I'm kind of tracing it out. It's an extension of the keel. And what's it called? It's called the stern frame. It comes up. It's got a place for the stern tube to tie into it, for the shaft to come through it, and all the way up and hooks around. This area right here, this area is called the propeller aperture. This is the stern frame, but this empty area is where the propeller is going to go. It's called the propeller aperture. And we'll work on that for a little bit too. Now here's some diagrams of a couple of stern frames. All right. Clean that up a little bit so we can see it better. See that shape? almost looks like a seahorse or something, doesn't it? It does certainly, but it does remind me. But where this is just a detail, so for right now you can ignore that. But this area that I'm circling with my mouse right now, that is the propeller aperture. Notice what it says right here where my mouse is. It says a cast steel frame. So there's two ways to make a stern frame. One is to make them out of liquid, molten, liquefied steel, pour it into a mold to get this complex shape. That's what these diagonal lines mean. Whenever you see a drawing that has these diagonal lines, that means it's cast steel. There's a few places on a ship that are. On the last test from that last chapter, the upper and lower end of the hose pipes, you might remember this question. That was in the reading. I know we didn't discuss it, but it was in the reading. The upper and lower end, the hose pipe lips on the exterior and on the upside on deck, the hose pipe lips are cast steel. You know what else is cast steel? The anchor is cast steel. You know what else is cast steel? Let's see. The Wildcat. And the shapes on the Wildcat, the whelps, that engage the chain. Remember that from last fall, last Intro to Naughty Sci, maybe in seamanship. You're discussing that, but the Wildcat is also cast steel. So there's one type of stern frame which is made out of cast steel, and notice what this one says over here. It's also a stern frame, but is a fabricated stern frame. So cast steel, you understand what that means? A fabricated stern frame, well, that's like take small pieces of just regular steel sections. You know what sections are, small pieces that are used for building the ship. Kind of everything besides steel plate is called a steel section. And a fabricated stern frame is built up out of smaller pieces, as opposed to being one big piece. Here's a good diagram. Stern frames cast and fabricated. Here's one. Here is a cast stern frame which has all the details on it, and here's one which is fabricated. Okay. There you go. Hey, look at this right here. Number 1 right there. What is that? There's the top gudgeon. Well, that makes me think that number 8, let's see, what's that? The bottom gudgeon. Remember pintles and gudgeon from lifeboat class back last semester, where you talked about how a rudder hangs on a ship. So it's still the same stuff. You know, a 1,000-foot ship or a 40-foot lifeboat, we're still talking about pintles and gudgeons. So study all of this and know the parts. I think that would make a good quiz at some point that we could probably do online.